Good afternoon and welcome to today's session on user adoption goals and your toolkit that you have in Dynamics 365 to help increase user adoption. My name is Heidi Newhauser. I am Director of CRM Projects at Reenhanced. We're based in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. Just a little bit about myself and my history with Dynamics 365. I have been working in Microsoft CRM technologies for 11 years now. Started with CRM 4.0, and I've worked with every version up until today's latest, greatest Dynamics 365 Online. So today at Reenhanced, we are using Dynamics 365 Online. We're also leveraging the Power Platform. So we're heavy users of Power Automate and the Power Platform in general. Some hobbies of mine, I love to run. So next year when Summit is live and in person, I would love to run the 5K with all of you. I love adventuring, camping, and just playing with my kids and hanging out. Again, like I said, I live in Green Lane, Pennsylvania. It's outside of Philadelphia. I am the CRM User Group Chair for the Philadelphia chapter. So if you're ever in the area, feel free to drop by. Or if you want to join us on one of our virtual events this quarter, we'd love to see you there. My favorite feature within Dynamics 365 are model-driven apps. We're going to talk about them later today. And I really love leveraging model-driven apps, specifically when we're talking about user adoption because they're so powerful. So here's our agenda today. It's very simple. First, we're going to talk about goals. Second, we're going to talk about your toolkit and how you can apply each of these tools and which goals will help you achieve in user adoption. But wait, before we get started, I want to take a moment and I want to do an oath to help your users. So I'd like everybody right now to just, get ready to take your oath. I'm going to say my name. You will obviously say your name where it says filling your name. So take a moment, say this aloud with me. Nobody will know you're doing this except those at your home. So ready? I, Heidi Newhauser, you say your name. I, Heidi Newhauser, promise to use configuration over customization whenever I can to simplify processes, to automate manual tasks, and always think about changes in terms of how it affects my end user groups. Awesome. So now we're all on the same page. We all know we want to help our users. All of the changes that we make in our Dynamics 365 systems is going to have a lens. It's going to have an eye on how to help with user adoption. So why does user adoption matter? Why are we even talking about this today? Well, you can create the most technically sound, brilliant piece of architecture in your Dynamics 365 system, but if nobody's going to use it, what's the point? So user adoption is extremely important. It's the most important part of any technology project, and it's an often overlooked area. So we're going to talk again about how you can help this. And if you see that your organization is fitting in under the umbrella of we don't really care about our users, everything is management driven, don't worry, we're going to talk about some things you can do today that will help change that and help you think more in terms of how to help your end users. The first thing we want to talk about are goals. So if you're not quite sure where to start in the realm of user adoption, I think it's really helpful to establish some goals. So I've listed a bunch here, and what we're going to do is talk about each one of them and what these goals might look like, and then we're going to dive into the toolkit. We're going to talk about everything that's available to you as a system administrator or a system customizer in Dynamics 365. So if you're looking to have some goals to help drive user adoption in your organization, well, one thing you can do, which you should do if you haven't already, is create a user group. And as members of the user group, I think everyone here can appreciate how dynamic and wonderful it is to have a group of people who have similar experiences that can share their experiences and help other people. So the concept is something that you've already bought in on because you're here. But what does this look like? So at your organization, what you would like to do is gather together some Dynamics 365 end users. If you're using different areas of Dynamics 365, sales, service, marketing, or if you have any of the add-ons as well, you want to have at least one member from each of these areas to be able to speak to you and share their experiences with you. Now, I know it might be tempting to create this group with all of your super users, all of your super advanced, tech-friendly, like really embracing the people that already love Dynamics 365. And while those are important to have, You want to make sure that you get a really good litmus test on all of your users. So I'll challenge everybody to include users in this user group who are less comfortable with technology, maybe even who are really against CRM and want to keep their notebook handy and their pen and paper. What you're really looking for, if you have the availability to get these types of people in your group, are the influencers at your organization. Who does everybody listen to? If you can incorporate them in your CRM user group, you're going to find out a lot of information. And what can you use this group for? Well, beyond the obvious go live and big projects, you can also utilize this user group for any system changes that are coming down the line. As a system administrator, you might sit in IT, you might sit in marketing, you might even be in sales. But wherever you are, you know one area really, really, really well, most likely. And you might think that changing a few different things in that area of Dynamics 365 won't impact your end users. But if you run it by this group, they might have some more insight that you don't have just because they're working in it in a different way. So again, create a user group. This is a fantastic goal to help user adoption. And you can use this group throughout the life of your Dynamics 365 product and beyond. Second goal, find the pain. Use this user group and go beyond this user group. Start to interview your end users. So if you start to think about how to interview your end users, it really depends on what their function is and what their role is in Dynamics. Sales reps, for example, you can learn a lot from a ride-along. So you can sit with a salesperson, you can job shadow them. A customer service rep would be really cool to just listen in on the calls that he or she is making note of how many tabs they're opening, how many different applications they have open. If you're silently watching and letting them go through their day, you will very quickly see where their pain is. So test drive a day in the life of a main user type in your system. And then you're going to quickly find out what the pain is. Another tip on finding the pain is be on the lookout for anything that your CRM users are doing manually in Excel. For example, reports that they have to configure, that they have to create for their managers. Oftentimes they export this information or recreate the information that's already in Dynamics 365. So if you can create a report that kind of takes some of the heavy lifting off and gives them an hour or two or more back in their day or their week, they're really going to start to embrace the technology of CRM a lot quicker. Automate what you can. Goes along with find the pain a little bit, doesn't it? So what you want to do is make your user's life as simple as possible. If you can use fields in your CRM system to help automate certain things, do it. Use classic workflows. Use Power Automate. The world is your oyster of automation, especially with Power Automate. There's like 280 connectors out there today. You can go way beyond the scope of Dynamics 365, which is really exciting and really interesting. And there's so much you could do to help your users now. More than you could before we were on the Power Platform. It's really neat. Simplify. Always simplify. Keep it simple, system admin. That's our KISS principle in the Dynamics 365 world. Whatever you do, try to simplify the user experience. Also, going along with that, you want to streamline the experience. If I am a marketing rep, I don't need to see everything that a sales rep has to see. Who doesn't have to see all the things that a customer service rep has to see? So streamline the experience based on your user types. Help guide your users and standardize processes. This is something that will have so much value, and I understand not every organization has clear processes. So this might be a little bit of a heavy lifting goal for you. It might involve working with sales management or service management or marketing management and helping to understand what that process is. But if you can do that, put that into CRM and standardize it all. It makes it a lot easier for your users to know what they need to do next, what data is next, what stage is next. Eliminate duplicate data entry points. You don't want to make people do the same thing in more than one place. They won't like the system. We want to make them love Dynamics. We want to make them realize, okay, I only have to put this in once, and then it just pushes it to all these other places I used to have to put it. So a lot of the tools we're going to talk about today are going to touch on simplify, streamline, guide the users and standardize processes, and eliminate duplicate data entry points, which is awesome. Next, minimize required fields. Any single one required field is a barrier to entry. It is something that might stop somebody from giving you information. So there are tools in your toolkit as a system administrator and a system customizer that you can implement to still get the information that you need without creating so many barriers. So I know it's very tempting to take all of the fields you need on the report that management has given you and make them all required in Dynamics. But I'm going to give you some more tools that give you hopefully the same results in a different way that encourages people to give you the data and enter the data into CRM without being scared of the required fields. And finally, keep forms clean. This is enhanced greatly by the new UI that Dynamics 365 Online is on right now. But we'll talk a little bit more about how you can keep forms clean. So again, there are more goals than just this, but I think this is a really good starting point. It's a great foundation in what goals you should have for user adoption in your organization. And next, we're going to apply these to different things that you can do in CRM. Okay, let's keep moving. We're going to talk about what's in your toolkit. So we are going to go through 3 slides of information here rather quickly, and then we're going to slow it down and do a deep dive into several of these items that we are looking at today. But what I wanted to do was give you a look at what is available to you, assuming you're a system administrator or a system customizer in your Dynamics 365 environment, that will help you get user adoption by using out-of-the-box tools. So that's the key on everything we're talking about. All of these tools in your toolkit are available out of the box with no customization needed. This is all just based on configuration. So the first thing here is tooltips. You can see on the right-hand side, I'm also trying to pair the primary user adoption goal or goals that tool accomplishes, or that tool can help you with. Now, implementing any single one of these tools, or maybe a few of these tools, is not going to simply guarantee user adoption for you. I'm sorry, I wish it could. But they can help. You know your users. If you don't know your users, you'll learn more about your users. And by finding out their pain points by using that user group that we talked about a few minutes ago, you're going to start to see which one of these things you could implement, or what group of items you could implement that might help them. So tooltips are the definition of a field. When a user hovers over a field in Dynamics 365, there's like this little pop-up that comes up and it tells them what that field is, which can be really helpful. So you'll see out of the box fields have tooltips configured, but when you are adding new fields to your system, you can add a tooltip as well. So we're going to talk more about those because I think they're powerful and underutilized, and those are the types of things that I want to focus on today. So a tooltip can help guide your users, right? So that's the primary goal that we achieve by implementing a tooltip. The second one on this list are forms. So you obviously have the ability to create more than one form on any given entity in Dynamics 365, and that is a tool available to you to help keep your forms clean. There are other ways, that's just one of them. Multiple field types. Dynamics 365 has a lot of field types, and as long as you choose the correct field type, you're going to help guide your users. They're going to understand the type of information that needs to go in there based on the field type that they're dealing with. Next, we have field level mapping. Field level mapping is really cool, and we are going to spend some more time on that today. So field level mapping is taking the value from one field on an entity and moving it over to a different field on a different entity. That helps your users eliminate duplicate data entry points. Talk about an underutilized field. I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about this and show you how to do this in your organization today. Field security, this is another really great one. So field security is something that you can implement where you can specify a group of users who needs to maybe only view one field or a set of fields but not edit it. Then you have a different group that should be able to edit it, but nobody else can. It kind of locks it down where you need it to. So field security is really, really cool and really powerful. It can help you streamline, it can simplify, and help guide users. which you're going to see repeated over the next several ones here. We have security roles. So security roles, business units, and teams all together along with field security are all a part of your security model, which are all configuration items, which are all things that you can implement to help streamline, simplify, and help guide your users, which is pretty awesome. Now we've come to business process flows. Business process flows are a very powerful weapon in your toolkit to help guide your users. So I know a lot of business process flows you're all probably familiar with. For example, the lead to opportunity business process flow. So you'll get 3 out of the box with any Dynamics 365 implementation, but you can create your own and you can add on to those existing ones. So business process flows will help guide a user through any established process. So it doesn't just have to be lead to opportunity or phone call to case. There's a lot of them. And you can incorporate any custom entities that you might have too. So it's a really cool thing to help guide your users through any established process that you may have. Next up is business rules. Business rules are really simple to implement. They use a drag and drop interface. We will show you how to do this, and we're going to create one together today just to illustrate what they can do. But they would allow you to simplify, minimize required fields, along with a bunch of other things. So we're going to go through every action available to you in a business rule and give you a couple real-life scenarios that you can walk through. Next is model-driven apps. Again, my favorite thing in Dynamics 365, especially when we talk about user adoption. I can't not do a deep dive on model-driven apps when I'm talking about user adoption. So don't worry, we're going to show you that too. Hopefully that's something you're looking forward to seeing because we're going to talk about it. Then we have Canvas apps. Canvas apps require a little bit more technical knowledge than I think some of the other things we're talking about. But if you're a Dynamics 365 user, you can simply go to Power Apps to create a Canvas app. Again, it does have a little bit of a different language and a different querying language, which if anyone has questions on that, you can reach out to me after this. I'm at heidi@reenhance.com, or you can find me at crmheidi.com. So I'd be happy to talk to you about Canvas apps. I am by no means an expert on Canvas apps. I am an expert on model-driven apps and all the other tools here, but maybe I can help get you started and point you in the right direction with a Canvas app if you're interested in that. UI controls. Love, love, love UI controls. There are several that we implement internally at Reenhanced and that we implement with just about every customer that we have because they can make such a big difference in end user adoption. So these allow you to streamline, simplify, and help guide users. I won't tell you more about them now because we're going to talk about them in a few minutes. Classic workflows. Obviously, a classic workflow can help with the find the pain and automate what you can. And then we have Power Automate and Flows. Again, help find the pain and automate what you can. And we're just talking about 4 more items in your toolkit. Again, this isn't the end of the list. This is the end of the list that we're discussing today. But there's a lot more that I'm sure that you use in Dynamics that I don't have here. So we have system views. Views are a great way to simplify. This is the ability for you to filter through all of the data in a particular area in Dynamics and just show the data that a user cares about. And those become building blocks on things like model-driven apps, which we'll talk about later. We have Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. For some users that are very Outlook-based, this is a huge winning user adoption. So you'll learn this as you start to do your ride-alongs or you start to sit down and interview people about how they work. If someone is really heavily dependent on Outlook, something like that could really be beneficial. So I have this listed as a primary user adoption goal of eliminating duplicate data entry points. There's a lot of times where people are doing the same thing on an Outlook calendar and a Dynamics 365 appointment when you might simply need to just link everything together. Editable grid, if this is a good fit for your organization, that's great for simplifying. Dashboards are good for automating what you can. And again, there's just so much more in your toolkit. So out of all these things, I picked 5 that I thought would be really cool to talk about today. Also, I hope this image isn't too disturbing. I thought it was hilarious, but my husband told me it's disturbing. So we are talking about tooltips, field level mapping, UI controls, business rules, and model-driven apps. which I'm really excited to dive in. So with no further ado, let's get started on these. So tooltips, what is it? So for each of these things, I want to go through 3 different questions. When would you use it? How do you implement it? And how does it help increase user adoption? After that, we will dive in and show it to you in Dynamics 365. And I want to make sure that everybody understands how to configure this. So tooltips, you would use a tooltip simply anytime you're adding a new field to Dynamics 365. How do you implement it? There are 2 ways to implement this, and it depends if you're an on-premise or an online customer. At the top, the screenshot that you're seeing here with my name, this is an example of what a tooltip looks like on the front end from the user side. So you can see here I've hovered over job title, which I've also highlighted, and it says at the bottom, job title, type the title of the contact to make sure that it's addressed contact correctly in sales calls, email marketing campaigns. Well, that blurb is the tooltip. And what does that look like when you're configuring it? Well, it's the description item. So this screenshot on the right-hand side is a custom field, and in the description box is the text that will display in a tooltip. So I'm going to show you that in a minute. After we answer our final question here, how does this help increase user adoption? It helps guide users by defining what a field is used for. I will make sure my slides are available to you at the end because I have links on each of these with more information. So if you have questions, you want to review, or you want to just dive in a little deeper, there will be links here with everything. So let's go into Dynamics 365 and we'll show you how to configure a tooltip. So let's do our quick demo on tooltips and how easy they are to configure them or change existing ones. I'm going to start out for my Dynamics 365 online friends. So if you are online, you're obviously going to navigate to make.powerups.com, which is where we are right now. You're going to navigate to your solution file, which I'm already in, and I've opened the account entity. Here's a list of my fields, and I know this is a new field that I've added, and I haven't put a tooltip on it. It's called number of appointments attended. So when I click the name of that field, that expands this panel on the right. This is a roll-up field that is simply counting the number of completed appointments for anybody associated with this account. Here's my description box, and it's blank. So right now, my users, when they hover over it, won't see anything. We are going to add a description that's going to help guide them so they know exactly what to do on this field or what this field is for. Roll-up of appointments attended by any contact associated with this account. There. Once you're done your tooltip, you're just going to click done. And that's all you have to do. Save your entity changes here and then publish your changes. And that's how simple it is to create and configure a tooltip in the online environment. So we're going to switch gears right now, and I'm going to talk to my Dynamics 365 on-premise friends or anyone else who's on an older version of the Microsoft CRM platform. We're going to navigate to this, your solution file, of course. You're going to go to your entities, you're going to expand one, so we'll stick with accounts and then go to your fields. You could also apply these on the form level if you prefer to do it there. Just double click on the name of the field, go to details, and you can start doing it here. Either one will get you the same thing. So here is our fields, the same list, and we'll go to new household because that's a different field, which again doesn't have a tooltip. So here is our field, and this is the description box. So right here, type in whatever you want, and that's adding a tooltip to this field. Check box for yes. Save and close. And that's your tooltip. So again, creating a tooltip is really simple, and it really is a best practice to just type something in that description box for your users to help them understand what that field is for anytime that you're adding a new field. So let's toggle back over to our slides so we can move on to our next tip. The next tool we're going to talk about is field level mapping. This is another one of my favorites. So when would you use field level mapping? You would use field level mapping anytime you want to copy the value in one field in one entity to another field in another entity. So I think one of the easiest use cases to illustrate this for you is that when a lead is qualified, certain fields from the lead will automatically, almost magically move over to the opportunity, the account, and the contact. That actually isn't magic. That is something that you can configure. It's called field level mapping. So our clearest example again is kind of that lead qualification. So how do you implement it? This one has to be done in the classic solution designer on an entity relationship. So the only way you can configure this again is in that classic solution designer. So those of you on Dynamics 365 online will need to toggle to the classic mode to do it and put it on the relationship of your entity. How does this help increase user adoption? Well, simply put, it eliminates duplicate data entry points across entities. It's really, really cool, and we're going to walk through how you can do that. But first, I think it's extremely important to talk about the rules. With any of these tools, you're going to have some rules, and you should just be aware of what they are before you start to build in it, before you come up on one of these scenarios that might not be compatible. So the very first rule with field level mapping is that your fields need to be the same type and format. So what I mean by that is you're not going to be able to map a whole number field to a date and time field. You're not going to be able to take an option set and map it to a text field. So it has to be like and like when we're talking about our field types. Number 2, the length of the target field must be equal or greater than the length of the source field. So this comes into play particularly with free text fields that might have specific character limits. Rule number 3, you can only apply field level mapping to one field at a time. Otherwise, the system won't know where to set it. It's just not possible to apply field level mapping on more than one field. Number 4, this will not work with a hidden field. If you have a hidden field on your form, it won't show up as a field that you can use with field level mapping. The source field has to be visible on the form. Rule number 5, for option sets to be mapped through field mapping, they have to have matching integer values, not just the matching text. And I have my little hint here in green. If you use global option sets as kind of the norm, that won't be a problem. So when in doubt, make your option sets global. So that is what field level mapping is, and I would love to show you how this works. So we're going to toggle back to our classic solution designer again. This time I'm going to come down to my lead, and I'm going to come to my relationship. Now, hopefully you know your entity relationships can either be one-to-many, many-to-one, or many-to-many. In this example that we talked about on the prior slide, we are going to configure some fields in field level mapping from lead qualification. So the lead to the opportunity is on the 1 to n relationship. So one lead to the opportunity. So I'm going to double click the name of this entity relationship, and let's just talk a little bit about what this is, because if you're newer to Dynamics 365 or if you're newer as a system administrator, this is an area that you probably haven't delved too deeply in. So again, this is my relationship between my entities. There's a lot of settings here, like relationship behavior, the cascading, what type of behavior is it? But what we want to focus on for the purpose of this example is on the left-hand side here, this little icon that says mapping. When I click the mapping icon, it's going to load a list of all the fields that are currently mapped. And apologies, sometimes demo environments have a bit of a lag time, which is always a really fun challenge when you're doing a live demo. So here we are. Right now, these are all of the fields in my system that are mapped, which is really cool. So you can see a lot of out-of-the-box fields that are already moving over during the lead qualification process. So we have things like budget amount, source campaign, description, the lead ID, moving over to originating lead. So the left-hand column, where it's showing me source name and your source display name, is going to be my lead in this example. My target, the two right-hand columns, are the opportunity. So again, I can scroll down and see everything that is currently mapped. If I want to map something else, I am going to click the new icon right below the name of my relationship, which is going to open a new window. And I have this zoomed in, so hopefully you can see it okay on my screen. Now I can map my own fields beyond the ones that are already mapped. So this is showing me every available field that is not currently mapped to something over to the opportunity. Again, left is lead, right is opportunity. And right here, right on this screen, Dynamics is showing me what my field types are. So it's making it really easy to know if there might be a problem when I try to map something. Like, I would not be able to take my single line of text and map it to 2 options. If I did, I'll show you. Click OK. It's going to run through all this, and then it's going to tell you it's an invalid field map. And it's going to give you all of the rules that we just went over. So one of these rules didn't work. If you're not sure which one, download your log file and really dive in. But for the new fields that we'd like to map, it's really simple. You would just take some of this information that's not currently mapped today, and you'd be able to select whatever you'd like here. So again, you can pick any field as long as it meets those 5 rules that we picked. Once you've selected everything that you're interested in mapping over, you're simply going to click this OK button in the bottom right-hand corner, which is creating the mapping. Then you come back to your relationship, and the very final step you need to take is save, or save and close. You would do this one at a time for each individual field that you want mapped over. So I'll show you one that I did a little bit before. I can find them easily because they have my unique publisher, which hopefully you're all using and yours don't say new. So we're going to double click to open this. This is one that I configured yesterday. So this is my lead type pushing into my opportunity type. It's run by a global option set, so my integer values match even though it's an option set. And now during qualification, my lead type will automatically push over to my opportunity type. So I hope that was a really good demo and explanation of how your field level mapping happens. Next up is something that I could talk for literally hours on, which is UI controls. UI controls are available for Dynamics 365 on-premise version 9.0 customers and better, and Dynamics 365 online customers. And they are a super valuable tool. So when would you use it? You would use it to change how data is displayed. It takes some of the free text fields or just the number-based fields, just the display of read-only text, and it changes it. It makes it visual. So how do you implement it? Well, it depends on the control that you're looking to implement. Some need to be done on the classic solution designer, while others can be done in Power Apps, and we'll talk about which is which. How does this increase user adoption? Well, users process information differently. Mixing up some of those read-only text fields with visual fields to represent their data can just make it easier to enter information. Now check out the link at the bottom of this slide because I have a lot of resources and a lot of documentation on a lot of the different types of UI to controls, which I think will really help you with how to configure it. Also with step-by-step with screenshots on how to create them. So we are quickly running out of time today. Time flies when you're having fun learning about user adoption. So let's go through this kind of quickly. I'm sorry I don't have the time to demo some of these for you, but these are some of my 10 favorite field controls. There are also entity controls you can apply, which is like the editable grid, and some view level controls you can apply like the calendar control, which is my favorite. But here are some field level controls. And what I want to do first is show you where they're configured, which are available if you're on premise, and then show you a quick example of what each of these looks like on a data field. So most of them are available in Power Apps. All of them are available in the Classic Solution Designer. So we are missing star rating, autocomplete, and input mask, which arguably are 3 of the most exciting of these controls in Power Apps. Now, how about if you're on premise? You know, usually there are some features that online has that you can't take advantage of. Well, good news, 8 out of these 10 are available to you. The 2 that are not are star rating and website preview. But the rest of these controls you can apply in your environment, again, as long as your Dynamics 365 on-premise 9.0 or farther along the path there. Here's what they look like. So the center column here where it says example is a screenshot of what this control looks like when applied to a field. The right-hand side is what field type it is compatible with. So these slides are all going to be available to you so you can dive in and start to really learn more about UI controls and how you can configure it. I have so many resources available on this on the blog at Reenhanced at crmheidi.com and on my YouTube channel for Reenhanced. So please come check it out. I've dove in depth on a lot of these controls, and I would love to share it with you. But in the interest of time, we are going to move on. So the next tool we are going to talk about in your toolkit that can make a really big difference for your users is business rules. Business rules provide a simple drag and drop interface where you can implement and maintain fast-changing, commonly used rules. So when would you use it? To apply form logic without requiring the use of JavaScript or plugins, which gets a smiley face from this configuration gal. So a business rule will run in real time, so you're going to see an action as soon as a condition is met. You can apply a business rule on a main form or a quick create form. They were introduced with CRM 2013, so if you're on the 2013 platform or anything newer than that, you can use business rules, which is really exciting. They work online, on Dynamics 365 for tablets, on Dynamics 365 for Outlook, and they're supported in both the online and offline modes, so you get to use them in a lot of places. Implementing them is as simple as leveraging the simple drag and drop interface, either in Power Apps or your classic solution designer. And how does this help increase user adoption? Well, based on meeting a condition, sorry about the cat, I knew I should have put her away. Based on meeting a condition, you can show recommendations or error messages, you can lock or unlock a field, you can minimize required fields until a condition is met, you can set a default value, you can hide fields. There's so much you can do, but as you can see on these actions on the screenshot on the right, it's all about simplification, streamline data, and minimizing your required fields. Again, link at the bottom will give you more information. But first, let's talk about rules. So we have two main rules here, things that you should know if you're going to use business rules. Number one is around scope. Your scope is important. Going to repeat that because we're on an online version and I can't see your faces and I don't know if you're paying attention. Scope is important. If your scope is sent to entity, it's going to run on the server side. So it gets queued up between everything else that's happening on that entity. If there's workflows, custom plugs in, JavaScript, custom code, anything else, it kind of gets queued up there. If a scope is set to a specific form or all forms on that entity, it's going to be applied on the client side. So as soon as the user opens the form, as soon as a condition is met, it will run right away. The second thing you should be aware of is that business rules will not work on two field types that I found. Number one, a composite field, things like full name. You would need to break it down into first name and last name separately instead of using the full name field. And two, multi-select option sets. While those are a really cool field type, they come with their own set of limitations. One of them is the ability to fire business rules. So now that we've talked about it, let's go in and look at it. I'm going to start in Power Apps for the Dynamics 365 online customers. I am still on the account in our solution file, and business rules is at a tab across the top. So we don't have a business rule currently configured on the account. So let's click Add Business Rule. That's how you're going to add a new business rule to an entity in Power Apps. Now, while this loads, I'm going to show you how to add a new business rule if you're an on-premise customer, because the rest of this is identical if you're online or on-premise. So let's pop over here. Here's our solution file again. And I'm going to either click New Business Rule, or I'm actually going to make it a little bit easier on myself. I'm going to go to Account and Business Rules here. And from there, I will click New. So again, the rest of this process is absolutely identical if you're online or on-premise. So I'm just going to demo it in the Power Apps area, but if you're on-premise, it's exactly the same. At the very top, it's going to name my business rule, something super helpful to manage. It's called New Business Rule. So do yourselves a favor and give it a good name. I'm sure you have a naming convention for workflows and other things that you've made in your system. I'd recommend following that same sort of convention and just making sure that you name this something that makes sense. So I am going to run this on, we'll do this show hide fields based on account type. And then we have description. So this is like a tooltip for your system administrators. If there's several of you, it might be nice to have a little description here. So when you're looking at all of your entity assets and you see this business rule, there could be a little bit of information. So I'm just going to copy and paste this, and we can add more to it later. Up at the top, we have a couple buttons. Save, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Validate, as you're building your business rule. If you want to validate that everything works, that everything you've specified is done, you can click that button. It'll tell you if you're missing anything or you need to add data. Scope. Now, check this out. It defaulted me to entity, which again means it's going to fire up in line with all the other things processing on the entity, which might be what you want. It might not be what you want. Maybe you just want this business rule to fire on one very specific form for one very specific user group. You would select whatever you want here. I'm going to click all forms on this because I want this business rule to fire on all of my forms. So awesome, we got that stuff done. Now we're going to build it. As with everything in Dynamics 365, there is more than one way to do what you would like to do. It's up to you, whichever way you like the best. I can click this quick add at the top and it's going to show me all of my different actions that I can add. Or I can use these actions graphically represented on the right. Really comes down to what kind of a learner you are. If you're a visual learner, you like working with the click and drag and drop, you can do that here, or you can do quick add. Now notice I can add another condition. So you can do nested conditionals here and get really fancy and exciting with your business rules. But in the interest of our demo here, we're going to keep this one really simple just to show you how it's configured. So I'm going to click on my first condition. Again, I get this super awesome display name of new condition, which is not my favorite. So I would like to teach all of you my best practices. I always rename my display names so at a quick view I can see what's going on. So my condition will be, we're calling this count type equals commercial. All right, so that is telling me what this is going to be. Now I come down to my rules. So what do I want my conditional to be? So I'm keeping this the entity because it's a count. And I am going to go to type. So my business type field is called business. So I have business equals, and we're going to do commercial. And then I scroll to the bottom and click apply. So clicking apply is important because otherwise it's not going to keep that conditional. So I'm going to click back over on my components tab. Now at the top I have a checkbox. This is my true criteria. So if account type is commercial, what do I want to do? My negative path has the X on the bottom. If account type does not equal commercial, what should I do? So a lot of things you can do here. Lock, unlock your fields, show an error message, set a field value, set a default value, set business required, and set visibility. So I want to click set visibility and drag it over here. Again, I can use this quick add and do set visibility here and then just tell it where to go. It really is your personal preference and how you prefer to see it. So we have this new action. The very first thing I'm going to do is change my display name because new action is very helpful. So I'm going to say show SIC. And then I'm going to find field, SIC code, visible yes, and click apply. Now I want to make sure to replicate that and have my negative action. So we are going to rename my new action to say hide SIC. And then my field, I'm going to find SIC and make it not visible, click apply. So now if an account is marked as an account type of commercial, I want to show my SIC code. Otherwise, any other type, I want to hide SIC code because I don't need it. I can come back to my components and start to give additional logic here. So maybe I want to grab set business required. And again, you're going to come up with your own rhythm and how you like to do it. I like to add my negative and my positive at the same time. So set business required, first thing we do is change our display name. Very good. We are going to say set phone required. So even though I don't have my phone number as a required field, I forget what my phone number is called on here. Main phone, there we go. So even though my main phone is not required on the form, if I am adding a commercial account, I want it to be required. If not, it doesn't have to be required. So again, we've got our field and then just change your status to business required, click apply. Now we're going to repeat that with a negative action. So we're going to change our display name to say phone not required. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, Heidi, why are we setting that as not required? Because by default, that phone number is not required. So why do I even need to put that there? And that is a great question. And I wish I was in front of some of you. Does anyone know the answer? Why are we going to add that negative path of not business required, even though that field's already not required? You're right. Great. I know one of you got this right. What if somebody added an account in my organization, set it as commercial, called them up to check on them, and then realized, oh no, this is actually not a commercial. This is an industrial. We need to change this. And then you don't want it required. Well, if you've already set it as commercial, it's going to maintain that requirement because you haven't done the negative field. So always cover your bases. Always add that negative path just in case you need it. Once you're done, you're going to click Save at the top, which is automatically going to validate. Again, you can click that Validate button before, but it's going to run it all at the same time. It tells me the validation is successful. My business rule is a success. The very, very, very last thing I have to do is click Activate. And that will ask for a confirmation that you do want to turn it on, because once it's on, it's on. One other thing you should know is once it's published and activated, you can't make any changes. If you have additional changes that you'd like to make to your business rule, you are first going to have to deactivate it to make your changes. So I know this was a very, very simple example, but I hope it illustrates the power that's involved in a business rule. I use these all over my CRM and our customers' CRM, and everybody loves business rules. I do, and I hope you do too. All right, so we've got one last thing left, so we are going to transition over to model-driven apps. We're running out of time, and we're on my favorite thing, model-driven apps. Okay, let's dive in because I want to show you a video after this. When would you use a model-driven app? Well, anytime you want to customize the user experience, give somebody a really streamlined view where you show them only the information needed for a specific user group to do their job, a model-driven app is such a good fit. You don't have to busy it with all the noise. If there's an entity that a user group doesn't need, just don't include it. If they only need 2, 3, or 4 system views instead of the 15 you might have, that's all you're going to show them. It's really, really exciting. How do you implement it? Well, you can implement a model-driven app in either Power Apps or the classic Solution Designer, and either way is controlled by the sitemap of the model-driven app. If an entity isn't included on a sitemap, it won't show up in your model-driven app. How does it help increase user adoption? Goodness, if you can only pick one thing we talked about today to implement it, this is the one to do it. It completely streamlines and personalizes the user experience for a user group. It's really, really powerful. And I wish I had time to run through the whole thing for you. I have a deep dive blog. It's a 6-series blog that's all about everything you need to know about model-driven apps. It's in that link below, over there. So make sure you check that out after this is all done. I'm going to pause for a moment. I know it's really fun hearing me talk for 50 minutes, but I thought it'd be really cool if my daughter, Kailyn, told you about model-driven apps. You may have seen this video before, but if not, I hope you'll humor us and enjoy the next 2 minutes and 45 seconds while Kailyn teaches you everything you need to know about model-driven apps.
Hi, I'm Kailyn, and I'm 8 years old. Today I'm going to show you how easy it is to add an app to Dynamics 365. If I can do it, so can you. I'm going to ask my mommy to help talk about some of these parts because she talks about this stuff more than me.
One of the most exciting features in Dynamics 365 is the ability to tailor the user experience by using model-driven apps. Creating a custom app for a user group helps user adoption and is quick and easy to do for system administrators. Let's get started building a model-driven app in Power Apps. I'll hand it back over to Kailyn.
To start, you have to go to make.powerapps.com. We're going to make a new model-driven app and put it in a solution file that is already here. Click Solutions on the left-hand side and pick up the solution like this. Click New at the top, select App, then choose Model-Driven App. It's so easy! Now we can make our app. I'm going to name this one Cotton Candy Playground as a description. I also want to put a pretty picture on my app, so I'll do that here.
This brings us to the App Designer, where we will determine which artifacts and entity assets will be included in the app. First, I need to create a sitemap. The sitemap controls what is contained within my app. If you don't add an entity here, your users will not see it in their app. Click the pencil icon to open the sitemap designer. Streamline this sitemap depending on what your user group needs to see in order to best do their job within Dynamics 365. Add dashboards, entities, web resources, or URLs. Once your sitemap is finished, click Save and Close at the top to return to the App Designer. Below the sitemap area is your dashboards area. Click the dashboards box to specify which system dashboard should be visible on this app. Remember, you only want to add those that your user group needs to see. Finally, in the Entity View section, you can specify which forms, views, and system charts will appear in the app. This is a great opportunity to streamline system views. Once you have finished your updates, click Save at the top, then Publish. If you want, click Play at the top and get a demo of what this app will look like.
Congratulations! You've just created a new model-driven app in Power Apps. I'm so proud of you. Plus, everyone will be so happy that you made Dynamics 365 easier for them. I told you it was easy. Congratulations!
Hope you enjoyed my session today. I had so much fun. I'm sorry we sped up in the end and ran out of time. I would love to hear what configuration tool you liked best that we talked about today. Tweet me at CRM Heidi and let me know what you think. Other than that, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of Summit. This is such a great conference and it's so wonderful having you here. I have all my contact information up here. Please stay in touch and let me know any questions you have about any of the configuration tools or any of the user adoption goals that we discussed today. Thank you. Bye.